Capital R Romantic by Stars in a Jam Jar on AO3. Episode 7, Chapter 7. Saturday. The Daniel K. Inouye International Airport in Hawaii was a rush of white lights and chatter. Katsuki hated it. The ceilings were too high, the walls were too bland, the sun was too strong, and he'd been separated from his boyfriend for way too long. The class had taken off for home from the San Antonio airport, which had shorter ceilings, much better decor, and far less windows letting in hot outside light. At about 6 a.m., and Katsuki hadn't been able to sit next to Kirishima on the plane ride. Now they were at a terminal through. He couldn't find Kirishima's decisive shocking of spiky red hair, which was annoying on multiple levels. You seem pretty high-strung. Kaminari leaned against Katsuki's field of vision. What gave it away? He asked in a huff. Kaminari just gestured to all of him, and Katsuki pulled in a deep breath in and out of his nose, with enough force to make his sinuses sting. There's a pink berry in the food court? Would some frozen yogurt cheer you up? How Kaminari knew a pink berry existed in the airport, or that it existed in the first place without Katsuki knowing a thing about it, aside from a place you could apparently get frozen yogurt, were not questions Katsuki thought were important to ask. He grumbled and swiped the area for Kirishima once again. Instead of his boyfriend, his eyes zeroed in on a familiar head of green curls. It was mostly out of habit, but he figured there would be worse things to focus on. That and something was off. He'd known Deku long enough to recognize his various tics, and what he was seeing was uncommon. Deku was sitting with Uraraka, Ida, Todoroki, and Shinsou in some chairs at the terminal. His smile, God, it had taken Katsuki ages to get used to him constantly smiling, was less acute than it usually was. More round and bubbly. He kept tucking his hair behind his ears and glancing away from his friends, specifically towards Shinsou. Katsuki resisted the urge to roll his eyes at Deku's complete unawareness of himself. He knew by now that self-control and being discreet were not phrases in Izuku Midoriya's vocabulary. Uraraka was mid-story when Izuku's sixth sense, so to speak, alerted him to the pair of eyes on him. He located Kacchan almost instantly, and furrowed his brows upon seeing the mildly irritated expression on his face. Yes, Kacchan always looked mildly irritated to some degree, but this was a specific kind. The kind that wasn't precisely dangerous, but still intrigued the feeling of being judged for something you didn't even know you'd been doing or had yet to do. Izuku gave Kacchan a look back that was part question, part challenge, part, could you maybe not right now? Thanks. Katsuki's lips stretched into a disagreeing line before he broke eye contact and looked back at Kaminari. Is that a yes? Kaminari did his dumb little finger guns that he did a lot when he didn't need to. It was pretty much one of his trademarks, along with the half smile stretching across his face and the thing his eyebrows were doing. The entire pose made him look absolutely ridiculous, but in a stupidly endearing way. Until further notice. Yes! Izuku thought that had been the end of that, but after lunch, as the majority of class was migrating to Terminal A, he was proven incredibly wrong. So, did you plan on keeping your giant crush on Mind Freak a secret, or did I miss the announcement? Izuku sputtered and looked around to see if anyone had heard. Uraraka was chatting up with Hagakure, and Ida was expositing something to Todoroki and Yaoyorozu. Shinsou was busy with Kaminari and Kirishima, and Izuku took a moment to be glad the inky possessive jealousy he'd been struggling with earlier had settled, seemingly content with the knowledge that Shinsou was his boyfriend, and that wasn't about to change anytime soon. Not if he could help it, at least. Right now, though, That wasn't the issue. Well, I just, uh, we didn't really announce it or anything? Izuku made sure to keep his voice down as he avoided Kachan's gaze. He isn't really big for big turtles, and I don't know how to bring it up, and. So, you're together now? Kachan's voice slammed down on the middle of Izuku's sentence like a block of iron. Yeah? If Katsuki was being honest with himself, he'd say he wasn't surprised Deku had gone himself a boyfriend. Still, it was such a strange concept to him. He'd been very slow over the past school year, deconstructing the image of a delusional, pathetic kid he roundly smacked around and done his best to distance himself from all his life. But it was still surreal to think that Deku was dating someone. He could barely recall Deku having a crush on anyone, let alone entering an actual romantic relationship when Katsuki wasn't looking. And now the hell was it possible for him to exist in a romantic context? Why was this so hard to grasp? When the fuck did it happen? Uh, Yesterday? How? I don't know. Well, I do know. It's like we just did it, okay? We found out we liked each other, so we decided we're together now. It isn't that hard to grasp. Katsuki thought back to the 3-month turmoil that was his courtship with Kirishima and resisted the urge to groan. Will you ever make sense? Katsuki asked, exasperated. I happen to think I make perfect sense. Yeah, you would. Katsuki decided to shrug it off and fall back to pulling a swift end to the conversation. He was getting much better at dropping things and not inflaming the situation when Deku was involved, and the romantic ventures of a stupid childhood friend was not something worth thinking about, or asking after. Or at least not now. He did, however, take a moment to spare a glance at Shinsou. He knew precisely what he saw in Deku, all things considered. But at the same time, he wasn't sure why Shinsou, of all people, would be the one to officially join Izuku's first relationship. Uraraka, most likely. She was Uraraka. Possibly Sue, or Ida, or even Aomama. They had been getting progressively more chummy. But the guy who, upon their first encounter, Deku jumped flipped over his shoulder to advance in a tournament? He was so much different from the crowd Deku had become comfortable with. How had this happened? Katsuki made the executive decision to not think about this until they got home. The second, Hitoshi stepped off the plane in Tokyo International Airport. All the residue tension and questions and little events from the trip melted away and disappeared in the face of home's familiar buzz. He breathed in the air and realized he missed the smell of Japan. He hadn't even realized Japan in general had a smell until leaving and coming back. Texas had been warmer, drier, and more uneven. Splash dip and unsteady compared to what Hitoshi come back to. Shinsou! He turned to the small, birdish voice and smiled wider. Eri, what are you doing here? He walked over where Eri was holding Aizawa's hand. Aizawa wanted to meet you at the terminal, and I wanted to see Deku and Kirishima and everyone. Eri spoke with her usual soft, careful tone, as though each word were a new flower to be added to her figurative daisy chain of a sentence, and needed to be used with the utmost gentleness. They should all be out by now. He stepped to the side so Eri had a perfect view of the doors all the passengers were pouring out of. Kaminari was chatting Bakugo and Kirishima's ears off about something. Ashido and Yaruzu were smiling and talking with Hagakure lapping behind. And right through her head, he locked eyes with Midoriya. The way his eyes lit up when they landed on Hitoshi's swiped the air from his lungs. Only now did the thought fully sink in. That's my boyfriend. The small, breathless smile on Shinsou's face made Izuku's heart pulse in a watery, golden feeling. Shinsou looked at him like No one else looked at him like that. He couldn't stop himself from rushing to Shinsou and throwing his arms around him. "We're home," he cheered. "Yeah." Hitoshi blinked. At the middle distance, a moment before raising his hand to Midoriya's shoulders to reciprocate. He felt Aizawa's eyes on the two of them, and self-consciously poked at him before Midoriya let go, and finally noticed their teacher and Eri. "Oh, good evening, Sensei. Eri, it is so good to see you." Midoriya crouched down to her level, and she smiled at him. "Good to see you too." She glanced down at the floor, her smile wavering for a moment before she peeked back up at him. Um, may I have a hug too?" "Of course." Midoriya wrapped his arms around Eri's waist, and she let go of Aizawa's hand to wind hers around his shoulder. She looked happy as a clam, then looked up at Hitoshi with her sparkly little eyes, before her smile turned smug, and she stuck her tongue out at him. Hitoshi blinked down at her, not sure if his vision could be trusted, and looked up to Aizawa for confirmation that had just happened. Aizawa, however, hadn't seen any of what just transpired because his attention was on the rest of the group to enter the terminal. "I counted. Nobody drowned," he said to Present Mike, who was making a beeline for his husband. "Of course not. Would I ever let that happen?" "No." A half smile played across Aizawa's lips, and Present Mike threw his arms around his shoulders. Around then, Midoriya straightened out with Eri, sat in the crook of his arms, her arms still wrapped around his neck. "So, should we help to wrangle everyone?" he asked. "Nah, I've got this." Present Mike opened his mouth, but Aizawa slapped his hand over it before he could say anything. "I'll do the wrangling. Midoriya, hold Eri on your shoulder and be a landmark." "Understood." He and Eri wriggled up onto his shoulders, and she happily settled her hands onto his hair. Hitoshi wasn't sure why, but the expression she was wearing was a bit unlike her. More like, oh, god damn it, she'd been hanging out with Monoma, hadn't she? That was the exact look he'd get when things were going his way, just slightly more serene than mischievous. Is a 7-year-old trying to steal my boyfriend that I just got yesterday? And is that 7-year-old seriously Eri? Their classmates all started to conjugate around them, and before long, everyone was shuttering through baggage's claim and piled into the bus, taking them all back to the dorms. Hitoshi was in the window seat next to Midoriya. Izuku glanced over to Shinsou to see him looking back and smiling softly. He smiled bigger, and couldn't help remembering how it felt to see the look Shinsou gave him as he stepped off the plane. He also remembered Kachan's words on this new arrangement. "So, did you plan on keeping your giant crush on Mind Freak a secret, or did I miss the announcement?" Did we plan to keep this a secret? 'Cause I don't know how to do that." Hitoshi blinked and thought on that for a moment. It didn't take more than a second or two to reach his conclusion. "If they find out, they find out." Yeah, I guess." Midoriya trailed off, his gaze floating to the seat back in front of them. Hitoshi furrowed his brows. "Did you want to keep it a secret?" "Well..." Izuku ducked his head in an attempt to hide the embarrassment flush that started gently creeping across his face. "Actually, it's kind of the opposite." He glanced up at Shinsou, who blinked as he absorbed what Izuku said, a small smirk tugging at the corner of Shinsou's mouth. "Who knew you were so bombastic?" "I will have you know I am the exact amount of bombastic I want to be. Watch me announce from the rooftops that I have a boyfriend now, and his name is Shinsou Hitoshi." "There's no way the teachers would let you onto the roof." "Like there's no way we could sneak down to the hotel pool past curfew?" "You make an excellent point, but I'm afraid we're in a moving vehicle right now." "Oh, you're right." Midoriya's face switched over to the thinky expression he had sometimes. The soft one for when he was trying to decide between the movie he'd vote on for movie night. Well, since I can't get on top of the moving vehicle, the only option left would be to announce it inside the bus. Hitoshi knew that look. That was the look of the man who was about to willingly act on an impulse. Wait, so are you actually going to announce to the entire bus that we're together now? Hitoshi was not mentally prepared for this. His heart rate started a steady climb upwards at the idea, and a strange jittery feeling swished in his stomach, like incredibly flustered yellow butterflies. If you aren't about to stop me, Izuku's hands were already in the back of the seat, in front of them, to pull himself up. Midoriya was already on his feet. Hitoshi felt his insides go all wishy and warm. He wasn't really sure why he was feeling like this, but he knew it was feeling pretty good. I am not. Izuku was smiling with every cell in his body, the realization finally taking full hold. He had a boyfriend now. Not just a boyfriend, he had Shinsou. Shinsou was his boyfriend. So really, as far as he was concerned, he had the best boyfriend. He had a boyfriend who said he was the sun and pastel ball of light and smiles. He had a boyfriend with a nice voice and a soft smile and a drive that could stand up to any villain. He had a boyfriend who looked prettiest at night, who can do splits, who was a capital R romantic. Guys, I've got a boyfriend and it's Shinsou, and it's the best, he yelled. Wait, what? Oh my gosh. When did this happen? I didn't mean literally fucking announce it, you dumbass. I feel like I should be less surprised. Did you have to yell that right in my ear? Midoriya, sit down. Aizawa's voice cut through the chorus of teenagers, and Izuku sized up a little hearing it. Yes, sir. He quickly sat back down as the chorus of voices dampened to an excited murmur, the smile just as quickly remaining on his face. He looked at Shinsou, who was staring at him with a soft of all expressions, as if to say, whoa. It only made Izuku grin wider. So, it's official now. Izuku's throat felt like it was filled with shimmery, excited bubbles as he said that. Yeah. A smile flashed across Satoshi's face. His heart rate lowered to a more reasonable pace as he took in the moment. Midoriya smiling like Hitoshi was the best. More exciting than on the bus. The sound of the city and the bus and their classmates. The tangible, sparkling feeling in the air. Midoriya's words rang in his head. You're the best. Midoriya's face softened as he pulled in a small, silent gasp. You really think so? I know so. Hitoshi reached over and took a hold of Midoriya's hand. Izuku felt like he'd just begun to fall. That was the only way to describe the very atoms in his body just did that. The things that they were doing, this emotion rising up and grabbing hold of him. He grabbed onto Hitoshi's hand and realized all at once why something like this could keep a person going the way Hitoshi said it had for him. I think Izuku breathed in, still beaming. I think I love you more than I did yesterday. Hitoshi's shoulders turned to agile. His head became light. He didn't know if words even existed anymore, let alone how to find the right ones, stringing them together and speaking them. He squeezed Midoriya's hand, hoping that would be enough. Midoriya glanced down at their hands and smiled softer, shifting closer, as their shoulders were touching and laced their fingers together. I like this. This is good. It's only been a day, but I'm good at making quick judgments. Hitoshi felt how warm Midoriya was. Out of all the time he spent thinking about what his boyfriend would be like, he never considered how warm he would be. He thought he might cry again. It had only been about a day, but Hitoshi felt so safe and warm and loved right here and now. Had he really spent an entire week agonizing over how to distance himself from this? Had it seriously only been a week since he realized Midoriya was the boyfriend he wanted? Kaminari was right. The week had felt eternally short. Yeah, you are. This is great. Midoriya beamed up at him and leaned closer, a moment before pausing, as if he just realized something. Can I kiss you? Hitoshi didn't know what to say for a moment, but only a moment. Absolutely. A small smile came over Izuku's lips, and he promptly gave his boyfriend a kiss on the cheek. Aside from a dare in second grade that ended badly, this was really the first time he'd kissed anyone who wasn't his mom. Shinsou's skin was chilly and soft and left behind a tingling sensation that danced across Izuku's lips. It was almost intoxicating. The two of them just looked at one another for a while. The bus slowed as the traffic built. A few of their classmates had no doubt seen, but neither of them cared all that much. It was warm where they had contact in one another. It was nice here. Izuku broke eye contact after a while, turning towards the aisle. Hitoshi looked out the window, taking extra comfort in knowing that they were home and heading back to the dorms. The rest of the bus ride passed quickly, with little movements, sparkled through of Izuku's phasing in and out of conversation with Hitoshi, chiming in, and small pockets of soft moments, just the two of them. Once everyone was back, they found a green and black gift basket on the table in the common room. Oh my gosh, that's so sweet! Uraraka chirped. They left us chocolate and a cake mix. Todoroki seemed a bit confused. Why? I think Texans are just like that, Tokoyami said. Well, I call first dibs. Sarah vaulted over the armchair and started rifling through the basket. Chaos ensued. Hitoshi was in the kitchen, putting away the cake mix. They had gotten 3. When he felt someone else enter, he closed the cabinet and turned around to find Bakugo, of all people. He was leaning against the doorframe, looking at him, and Hitoshi knew he had something to say. Can I help you? Yeah. He seemed to get more irritated, as if the very act of speaking was annoying, despite him coming to Hitoshi in the first place. Everyone else is too nice to tell ya, so I'm saying it right now. If you and Deku go south, you'll have the entire class on your ass. Hitoshi blinked, wondering if that doubled as a direct threat, or was just a general warning, and finding it kind of ironic that the guy who allegedly made his boyfriend's life miserable for years was giving him the "don't you dare hurt them" talk. I should hope so. Hitoshi walked past him, bumping Bakugo's shoulder as he squeezed through the doorframe. He paused for a second and looked back over his shoulder. And we won't. Wow, it had only been a week, and Izuku didn't even realize how much he missed his room. As he wrapped his arms around his All Might plushie, he kind of missed falling asleep next to Shinsou. Izuku statutously avoided the idea that humans were meant to live in large groups and have lots of physical contact. And after a week of falling asleep with someone, and that someone being his boyfriend, oh wow, he wondered if he was experiencing sort of withdrawals. Like when you spend a little while drinking more soda than you're used to, then stop and suddenly you're craving soda more often. If I do this now, it's going to become a habit. Izuku weighed down his option. He could either shove down the needy jumble of "I really want to cuddle right now" and go to sleep, or he could shovel out of bed and knock on Shinsou's door. But he's already a light sleeper. And I feel like announcing us is one thing, but asking to just be let into his space so soon after we got together is some kind of flux pass. Plus, if I stay here, I can get used to sleeping on my own again, which is just the urgent thing to do. Izuku squished the bottom half of his face against the back of this plushie's head. It was a very well-made stuffy, and it wasn't the kind that didn't really need much to give, but uncomfortable to hold. It paled greatly in comparison to the nice, soft, and sturdy feeling of holding onto Shinsou. And besides, he really wanted to wake up next to Shinsou. He wanted to spend the mornings before class with him. This is an entirely unfair choice. Hitoshi was scrolling through Bundler, knowing full well that this was not good for his sleep schedule, when he heard a soft knock on his door. He cast a suspicious glance at said door and quietly got to his feet. He cracked open the door to see Midoriya. He bashfully darted his eyes back and forth from Hitoshi's face, and Hitoshi was struck with the fact that, wow, this is adorable. I can't really sleep? Can I. Can I sleep with you? Hitoshi took a few seconds to process this, and response immediately came out of his mouth. Yes, absolutely. Midoriya's eyes lit up like they had when he'd come off the plane, and Hitoshi realized all at once he was wrapped firmly around the boy's finger. Izuku smiled at Hitoshi for a bit before realizing neither of them had moved. So may I come in? Oh, right. Yes. Yes, of course. Shinsou opened the door the rest of the way and stood aside to let Izuku in. When Shinsou had been moving in, everyone had insisted on seeing inside. He had since gotten his meticulously maintained bike out of his room and into the back shack behind the building that everyone had a key to, but nobody had actually entered since, aside from Eri and Koda, that one time the dorms had been invaded by 3 different colonies of stray cats. Koda had since worked out a deal with the clan, and the one cat that had started it all, and the only one that came on occasion to check on Shinsou and get food for him. Izuku was pretty much the only other human who Shinsou had let into his room since the incident. It made him feel important. Shinsou's phone was dimly casted a logo onto the ceiling from the bed, confirming Izuku's suspicions that he hadn't actually asleep despite lights being out half an hour ago. Looking at the twin-side bed, though, it occurred to Izuku the minor quandary they're now facing. The bed barely had enough space for the 2 of them. Just looking at it, they stood there awkwardly for a few seconds. Shinsou glanced from Izuku to the bed and back a few times before picking up his phone and pulling back the covers. I guess you can climb in first, if you don't mind being cornered or squished or anything. Yeah, okay. Izuku climbed into the bed and pressed his back against the wall, wondering internally if this had really been a good idea, until Shinsou climbed in after him, and they were facing each other and almost touching, and oh gosh, why did this feel so exhilarating? Well, I know I've asked before, but it still feels a little strange asking for cuddles. No, it's fine. Yeah, it's all good. Yes, you can absolutely have cuddles. Hitoshi's heart started to roll hectares down a particularly steep incline, and his tongue tied itself in knots. All he could really do was pathetically half hold his arms to oblige. Midoriya's little relieved grin had his insides going all mushy-gushy, and before he knew it, a soft ball of sunshine smuggled up contently in his arms. He suspected Midoriya could hear his heart beating, with how it pounded in Hitoshi's own ears. Izuku laid suspended for a few seconds, decidedly paralyzed. The nice, soft cocoon of safety wasn't new at all. Ida and Kirishima excelled at making you feel small and safe and loved, and Mom knew how to do it best. Just objectively, but it took him a few seconds to process this moment. Yes, this whole shrink at this point centered entirely around jumping into things head first. But it struck him then that this was a bit of a momentous occasion. Right here, right now, holding his boyfriend. Oh gosh, his boyfriend. His very first boyfriend. And wrapped up in his arms for the first time. He hoped more than anything that he could do this many more times to count. Consistently, he knew becoming so taken with the idea so soon didn't constitute what most people would call sensible. But that was fine by him. You were right, he said softly. Hmm? Izuku chuckled a little at the slightly bewildered look on Shinsou's face. I may just be turning into a lowercase r romantic. Oh. Shinsou cracked a smile. See, it only took a week. Next step, I'm gonna get that capital R. Good luck. It took me many years of hard work and romanticism to achieve true capital R romantics. Ah, you won't help me? Izuku dramatically batted his eyes up at Shinsou, like Uraraka would do sometimes to get Ida and him to do things like pretending she wasn't the one who kept eating half of the ice cream in the middle of the night. It worked excellently. It worked excellently on Shinsou. Of course. What kind of boyfriend would I be if I didn't? Izuku relished the word, as a fury feeling set in. So did drowsiness. A soft hum slipped from his throat, as his eyes slowly started closing. You promise? He mumbled. Of course. Shinsou said softly after a beat. Izuku knew he should take in the moment. He didn't plan to miss a single second. By the time Hitoshi's eyelids became heavy, Midoriya's breathing moved slowly and peacefully against Hitoshi's cheeks. Hitoshi wondered if he was dreaming, but he didn't want to move and potentially disturb his sleeping boyfriend. Earlier this week, Hitoshi wanted nothing more than to be with the boy currently sleeping in his arms. How could this be real? I told you before, I wanted someone to fall asleep and wake up with, and I'm already halfway there. Hitoshi touched his forehead to Midoriya's, closing his eyes. So, please be here in the morning. The night moved on, quiet and soft, and the boys slept safe and sound until the sun rose on their first official day back home. Oh my god! Oh my god! Can you guys believe that? It's done! It's done! No! It's done. I'm sad. You're sad. I'm sad. We're all sad here in this household. We're all espresso depresso. We're all depresso espresso. There you go. Depresso espresso. Fuck, there was another one. It's upsetty spaghetti. There you go. Because I'm like, there's another one. God, this was such a cute fan fiction. Stars in a jam jar. If you're listening to these this outro specifically, because I know you do listen to the videos. I've seen you comment. By the way, hi, thank you for listening. I don't get many authors coming and viewing their fan fictions being turned into podfics. But I enjoyed this so much. Normally, I'm not a big fan of like slow burns that that go on and we never see the relationship actually progress. We only see it, they get together towards the end and then we have like one chapter of them together and then that's the end of the book or the end of the thing. I'm not really big on that type of thing. But I think there is moments where people write it goodly, and this is one of the instances sorry. My lisp acted. We love this. Okay, acted up right there, and then I don't know what the frick me going helped, but apparently it did in my mind. I have a lot of energy. Okay, but as I was saying, in this instance, in this case, it works out perfectly fine, and I actually quite enjoyed this. This is definitely going in my bookmarks. Once I note it down in my catalog of fanfictions I have read. And you know what? This is definitely going into the pile of fanfictions that I'm going to do talks through, which is a series that I'm gonna starting up soon. I'm working on the first script, which is Fanfiction Cloud, right? Some older viewers are like, oh, Fanfiction Cloud is coming back. Yes, it's coming back, but it's being improved. So instead of sitting down and just giving you my notes of like the whole fanfiction chapter by chapter, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to tell you a fanfic that I enjoyed, I have read. I'm going to give you the spoiler-free synopsis, like the summary, what I think, how it is, the type of story it is, small little quote unquote critiques where it's like, I really, really love this, and I wasn't big a fan of this, but I really, really enjoyed this, this, and this, and they did this great and amazing, and I definitely recommend it. And then we go into the spoiler area where I go more in depth of how this, author did a wonderful thing. Like, for example, if I was to do that with this fanfic, I would go on a whole thing about pacing. You pace this in such a way, the story and your writing specifically, so that it literally does not feel like it's been a week. It feels like it's been longer. Right? The way you even portrayed characters and like Izuku's jealousy, Hitoshi and his fight with feelings, and the way you describe the characters learning about their feelings is also a really, really interesting way that you chose to write things and stuff like that, and I would commend you on that type of stuff. But yeah, definitely going into bookmarks, definitely going into my list of, if somebody asked me for recommendations, this would be one of them. So yeah, I appreciate so much letting me podfic this. I absolute appreciate. The next fanfiction that's gonna come in place of this one is one that I'm super excited for, and I'm not gonna tell you guys what it is. You heard me. I'm not. And I'm not just saying this because I'm waiting for a certain someone to reply and seeing if, I'm gonna end up doing this one or end up doing another one. Not at all. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't know what you're talking about. Yeah. Okay. Anyways, as always, my raindrops, make sure to eat, sleep, drink water, take your meds. Have a wonderful day or night. Link to my Discord server and socials are down in the description. Subscribe to see more of my content, and thank you so much for watching.